Welcome to our channel. Before we get started, please consider liking and subscribing so we can bring more stories like this to you.
The Serpent's Kiss. Anya Petrova straightened the crimson barrier, butterflies erupting in her stomach. The treasures of the Tsar's gala pulsed around her, and as a Metropolitan Museum volunteer, she was assigned to the Serpent's Kiss, the legendary necklace, a symphony of emeralds and diamonds commissioned for Catherine the Great, rested on a bed of ivory silk within its fortress of glass. Its allure held her captive, the cool fire of the gems whispering secrets of empire and ambition. She beamed at a girl, eyes wide as saucers, pointing at a Faberge egg. "Splendid, isn't it?" Anya murmured, her voice a gentle caress. Sharing her love of history was a delight. The tinkling of crystal and the low thrum of voices formed a comforting backdrop, a stark contrast to the icy tendrils of anxiety that coiled within her whenever she remembered her approaching art history finals. The hours blurred into a swirl of elegant gowns, glittering ornaments, and practiced pleasantries. Anya answered queries about the Romanovs, her knowledge flowing effortlessly. As the throngs diminished, the security detail began their final circuit. That's when Sergeant Miller, a burly man etched with perpetual worry lines, approached, his complexion drained of color. "Miss Petrova, I need you to come with me, please." Anya frowned. "Is there an issue?" He nodded toward the Serpent's Kiss. The display case stood barren. The silk cushion remained, untouched, but the necklace had vanished. A wave of dread washed over Anya, a vice clamping around her chest. "But I've been right here. I saw nothing." Her voice cracked, each word escalating in frantic disbelief. Miller sighed, snapping on latex gloves. "We have to follow protocol, Miss Petrova." He indicated a delicate, antique key lying on the polished floor, just inside the rope. "Do you recognize this?" Anya gaped at it. Speechless. It was the key to her grandmother's cherished music box, a keepsake she always carried in her bag. "No, I don't understand how." Within moments, pandemonium reigned. A swarm of uniformed officers descended. Anya was bombarded with questions, her stammered denials swallowed by a din of accusations. Her fingerprints adorned the display case. Surveillance footage showed her proximity throughout the evening, yet none depicted her opening the enclosure, the key, the prints. Her presence, the evidence, formed a damning indictment. Across the grand hall, John Stratton stood, leaning against a fluted column, his expression an unreadable mask. He had been observing the unfolding drama with a quiet intensity, his gaze a honed blade. He'd come to the gala pursuing a whisper about a black market art dealer, but the uproar around the Serpent's Kiss had snagged his attention. He watched as Anya Petrova was led from the museum, her face ashen and tear-streaked. The raw injustice of it hung heavy, a suffocating cloak. Stratton had witnessed enough setups to recognize the hallmarks. The evidence was too pat, too convenient. It screamed of contrivance. He focused on the incongruities. The key, for one, he'd observed Anya reaching into her purse earlier, offering aid to a child struggling to open his piggy bank. He'd caught a glimpse of a dark, intricately carved box nestled within it. If that key unlocked it, it would have been buried deep inside, not readily available. And her manner? Stratton had watched her interact with museum guests, her genuine passion for the exhibits radiating from her. She seemed too sincere, too defenseless, to mastermind such an elaborate scheme. As the police transport sped away, Stratton straightened. This was far from concluded, he sensed. The Serpent's Kiss was lost, yes, but something more valuable had been purloined. Anya Petrova's liberty. And Stratton, guided by an intuition he valued above all else, knew he had to reclaim it. Cracking a maximum security vault, he suspected, would prove the easy part. He needed to uncover who had framed her, and why, and he had a gut feeling the answers lay submerged within the gilded cesspools of the city's upper echelon. Shadows of doubt. Stratton's gaze bored into the grainy security feed. The server rooms, monotonous, were a stark contrast to the hushed reverence normally found in the Museum of Antiquities. Now, it felt like a stage set for a bitter comedy with Anya, poor Anya, center stage. He rewound, a glittering sarcophagus looping endlessly, then sped forward. The Serpent's Kiss, radiant under the display lights, was there, then vanished. A relentless stream of oblivious tourists flowed past. He strained forward, eyes aching. The Wide angle offered a view of the entire hall, but the display case itself remained just out of reach, like watching a drama unfold through a pinhole. Anything fruitful? A voice grated behind him. Stratton turned to Gerald, the network admin, who leaned against a server rack, exhaustion carved into his face. Just phantoms, Stratton sighed, and an utterly useless camera placement. Gerald gave a mirthless chuckle. Budget constraints. Insurance covered the artifacts, so security upgrades were last on the totem pole. How convenient, Stratton muttered. More to himself, he jabbed at the screen. Any visual voids? Gerald straightened, rubbing the crimson from his eyes. A smattering. Mostly near the restrooms and emergency exits. But nowhere adjacent to the Serpent's Kiss. Supposedly. He paused, a flicker of doubt in his gaze. Unless, Stratton raised a brow, prompting him. Unless what? Unless someone possessed the know-how to game the system. Gerald dragged a hand through thinning hair. We had a guy, ex-military, tech-savvy prodigy. Knew every circuit, every protocol, a bit, unpredictable, though. Dismissed, Gerald confirmed with a nod. Weeks back. Unauthorized access. Allegedly tweaking schedules, shifting camera angles during low traffic periods. Trivial stuff, but the director blew a gasket. A spark of interest ignited within Stratton. His name, Daniels, Mark Daniels. Leaving the server room, the museum's opulent lobby felt sterile. Stratton located a secluded alcove near a marble effigy of a Grecian deity and retrieved his phone. He needed to locate Mark Daniels. He found the museum's break room. A stuffy space redolent of stale coffee and simmering anxiety. A knot of uniformed security personnel huddled around a table, their faces etched with worry. "Excuse me," Stratton announced, displaying his unofficial credentials. "Investigating the theft. I need to ask a few questions." They eyed him with suspicion. The woman with the severe hairstyle and fatigued eyes spoke up. "We've already cooperated with the police. What else can we possibly offer?" "Mark Daniels," Stratton stated. "He was employed here." "Correct." A wave of unease washed over the room. Eyes darted nervously. Finally, a young man, plagued by a facial tic, spoke hesitantly. "Yeah, he was skilled. Maybe too much so." "Explain," Stratton urged. He knew every viewpoint, every chink in the armor. He was constantly saying the setup was a joke, that anyone with a modicum of ingenuity could waltz off with priceless art. Did he ever mention the Serpent's Kiss in particular? The young man hesitated. Not expressly, but he routinely griped about the laxity surrounding the premium exhibits, claimed they were practically inviting larceny. Stratton pressed. Did he display any animosity? Resentment after his termination? The woman interjected. He was embittered, claimed he was taking the fall, that they needed a scapegoat for the system's deficiencies. Stratton thanked them and retreated, the weight of their testimonies settling upon him. Daniels, a disgruntled expert with intimate knowledge of the museum's weaknesses, conveniently out of a job, thief or fall guy. Returning to the exhibit hall's solemn grandeur, Stratton approached the Serpent's Kiss display. His fingertips traced the glass, searching for joins, breaches. It was fortified, solid. He scanned the ceiling for laser grids, pressure plates, signs of intrusion. Nothing obvious. His gaze dropped to the floor. Gleaming marble tiles, mirror smooth, offering no purchase for pressure sensors. Kneeling, he scrutinized the display case base. There, partially concealed by a decorative flourish, he detected a minuscule, round indentation. Too precise to be coincidental. Stratton photographed it, magnifying the image. It resembled a keyhole, but not for a standard key. Something advanced. He rose, a chill certainty taking hold. This wasn't a simple grab and dash. This was orchestrated. This was deliberate, and Mark Daniels, whether culpable or a pawn, was undeniably entangled in the scheme. The puzzle pieces were beginning to coalesce, but the resultant image remained incomplete, and he sensed, with a mounting unease, that the stakes were about to skyrocket. Rooftop pursuit. The address was a flophouse above a neon-drenched noodle bar. The air thick with the smell of soy and desperation. Stratton picked the lock on the ex-security guard's room with a practiced flick of his wrist. Inside, it was bare. A stained mattress, a flickering bulb, the lingering scent of cheap cigarettes. He found it tucked under the mattress. A crumpled betting slip, date stamped for the night of the heist, the losing horse highlighted in frantic pen strokes. A dead end. Unless, Stratton glanced at the bar's address printed on the slip, a dive miles from the museum. A possible alibi, if someone vouched for him. He heard the floorboards creak behind him. Turning, he saw the guard, a squat man with a face like a smashed potato, holding a rusty pipe. "Get out!" The guard rasped, voice gravelly. "Now." Stratton didn't move. "I need to ask you some questions about the necklace." The guard swung the pipe. Stratton ducked. The metal whistling past his ear. He grabbed the man's wrist. The bones surprisingly fragile, and twisted. The pipe clattered to the floor. Before he could follow up, the guard kicked out, catching Stratton in the stomach. He stumbled back, momentarily winded. The guard didn't hesitate. He scrambled out the window, onto the fire escape. Stratton followed, adrenaline surging. He vaulted over the windowsill, landing heavily on the metal grid. The guard was already scrambling up to the roof, moving with surprising agility for a man his size. Stratton pursued him, the gritty wind whipping at his face. The city stretched out below, a dizzying expanse of lights and shadows. The guard reached the roof access door. Fumbling with the lock, Stratton launched himself forward, tackling him just as the door swung open. They tumbled onto the flat, gravel-covered roof. The guard scrambled to his feet, darting towards the edge. He began leaping across the gaps between buildings, a desperate, ungainly dance against the night sky. Stratton followed, his movements fluid and precise. A predator closing in. He scaled ventilation shafts, leaped across air conditioning units. His boots finding purchase on narrow ledges. The wind roared in his ears, the city a blur beneath his feet. He gained on the guard, the distance between them shrinking with each jump. He anticipated the guard's next move, cutting him off at the edge of a building overlooking a bustling street. "Nowhere left to run?" Stratton said, his voice tight. The guard turned, his eyes wild with panic. He lunged. Swinging a fist, Stratton sidestepped the blow, grabbed the guard's arm, and spun him around. He delivered a sharp chop to the back of the neck. The guard crumpled, hitting the gravel with a thud. Stratton knelt beside him, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He grabbed the guard's chin, forcing him to look up. "Who paid you to lie?" The guard groaned, his eyes glazed over. "Don't know. Just a voice on the phone. Said Anya was trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "Didn't say. Just needed her gone." Pointed the finger. He coughed, a trickle of blood running from his mouth. "Money. They paid good money." Stratton released him, disgusted. "A hired gun." Nothing more. He needed to find the voice, the one pulling the strings. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Find everything you can on a burner phone used the night of the heist," he said, his voice hard. "I need to know who paid to frame Anya." The wind howled around him, carrying the distant sirens getting closer. He looked out over the cityscape, the glittering lights now seeming menacing. He had a long way to go. Whispers in the dark. The ex-guard, a hulking man named Decker, fidgeted in the chair, the cheap plastic groaning under his weight. Sweat beaded on his forehead, reflecting the single bare bulb hanging precariously above. "Look, I said I'd tell you everything. Just keep your voice down." Stratton leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. The air in the dilapidated apartment was thick with the smell of stale beer and regret. "I am being patient, Decker, but my patience isn't infinite. You disabled the security system at the gala? Who paid you?" Decker swallowed hard. "I don't know his name. They called him Serpent." "Serpent?" Stratton repeated, the name a cold whisper in the cramped room. "Did you see him? Any distinguishing features?" Decker shook his head vehemently. "No, never met him face to face. All communication was through encrypted messages, dead drops, untraceable, professional." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "They just wanted the security grid down for 15 minutes. Said it was a test. Didn't know anything about a heist, swear to God." Stratton studied him, Searching for any flicker of deception in his bloodshot eyes, he saw fear, certainly, but also a deep-seated weariness. Decker was a pawn, a small cog in a much larger machine. What about the payment? How did that work? Same way. Untraceable accounts. They paid well. Enough to set me up for a while. Decker's voice dropped. Enough to make me forget what I was doing was wrong. Stratton knew that kind of forgetting.it was the kind that ate away at a man from the inside out. Right? Well, Decker, that's what you've been looking for. Stratton stood and gave Decker one last look. I'm going to leave you with a choice to make. Disappear and hope the serpent doesn't find you, or stick around and make amends for what you've done. Back in his temporary lodgings, a small room above a bustling kebab shop, Stratton pulled out his laptop. The glow of the screen illuminated his face as he typed, searching for any whispers, any rumors connected to this serpent. He found nothing concrete, only fleeting mentions in online forums dedicated to the city's underbelly, speculation, innuendo, and the occasional veiled threat. He shifted his focus, searching for anything on high stakes, underground poker games. He knew from experience that information flowed freely in those smoky rooms, fueled by adrenaline and ego. After an hour of digging, he found it. The Crimson Room, a notorious club operating beneath a seemingly innocuous antique shop in the Old Town district. The game was invitation only, catering to the city's elite, businessmen with shady dealings, corrupt politicians, and the occasional international art thief. Perfect. Getting an invitation would be tricky. Stratton knew he couldn't just walk in and flash a wad of cash. He needed an introduction. A connection. He remembered a contact he'd made years ago during a brief stint infiltrating a smuggling ring, a low-level fence named Sal DeMarco. DeMarco owed him a favor, a debt Stratton intended to collect. He found DeMarco's number after some digging and made the call, keeping his tone casual but firm. DeMarco, initially hesitant, quickly changed his tune when Stratton reminded him of the unpleasant consequences of forgetting past obligations. An introduction to the Crimson Room was arranged for the following night. Stratton closed his laptop, the screen fading to black. He needed to prepare. He opened a worn leather case containing a set of lock picks, a miniature camera disguised as a button, and a small, almost invisible earpiece. He wouldn't go in blind. He also pulled out a tailored suit, a relic from his past life. He examined it in the dim light, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Time to blend in. He slipped into the suit, the familiar feel of the fabric a reminder of the man he once was, the man he might need to become again. He needed to be a player, a shark among minnows. Tonight, he would listen to the whispers in the dark, and hope they led him closer to the truth. Anya's freedom depended on it. The art of deception. The air in the penthouse suite vibrated with a low thrum of anticipation, expensive cologne, and the clinking of ice against crystal. Stratton, his tailored suit feeling strangely out of place amidst the flamboyant excess, scanned the room. The poker table, a polished expanse of mahogany inlaid with mother-of-pearl, was the focal point. Around it sat a collection of faces etched with greed and barely concealed tension. He spotted his target, or rather, the person he needed to get to, Isabella Rossi. She sat across from him, a splash of crimson in a sea of dark suits. Her dress, a deceptively simple silk sheath, clung to her curves. Emerald earrings, the size of small grapes, dangled from her lobes, catching the light. She exuded a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Her lips curved in a knowing smile as she surveyed the other players. He took the empty seat beside her, nodding a silent greeting. Stratton, he said, extending a hand. Her grip was firm, cool. Isabella Rossi. You're new to this little gathering, Mr. Stratton. Her voice was a low, husky murmur, like velvet over steel. An infrequent indulgence, he replied, trying to match her easy confidence. I understand the stakes can be stimulating. She chuckled, a low, throaty sound. Stimulating is one word for it. Catastrophic for some, lucrative for others. She flicked a stray strand of raven hair behind her ear, her eyes never leaving his. What brings you to our table, Mr. Stratton? A love of the game? Or something more specific? The cards were dealt. Stratton picked up his hand, his mind already calculating the odds, but his attention remained focused on Isabella. I hear you have an appreciation for fine art, Ms. Rossi. Indeed, she purred. Passion? And you, Mr. Stratton? Do you share my passion? For certain pieces, he said, raising the bet. The ones that are misunderstood. He watched her carefully. She met his gaze, unblinking. Misunderstood art often finds its true value with the right owner. Wouldn't you agree? She matched his bet, then raised him. Are you referring to something in particular? Stratton considered his cards. Not a winning hand, but a strong one nonetheless, just like the situation. A necklace, perhaps. The serpent's kiss. A bit controversial, I believe. Isabella's smile tightened, the corners of her eyes crinkling slightly. A tragic loss, such a magnificent piece. I heard Anya Petrova was involved. Her voice was laced with a subtle, almost imperceptible curiosity. Stratton folded. He wasn't here to win the pot, but to test the waters. A convenient scapegoat, perhaps. Isabella gathered her winnings, her fingers long and elegant as they stacked the chips. The police seemed quite convinced of her guilt. Are you suggesting otherwise, Mr. Stratton? Let's just say I believe in looking beyond the obvious, he said, his voice low. Sometimes, the most elaborate paintings have flaws hidden beneath layers of varnish. She tilted her head, her emerald earrings swaying. A clever analogy, Mr. Stratton. But varnish can also protect a masterpiece from the elements. Tell me, what elements are you trying to protect Anya Petrova from? He watched her deal the next hand. Her movements fluid and graceful. He raised the stakes higher. Justice, Ms. Rossi. Perhaps you know something that could shed some light on this unfortunate situation? Isabella studied him, her expression unreadable. She raised her bet again, her eyes gleaming. Everyone knows something, Mr. Stratton. The question is, what are they willing to reveal? And what are they willing to risk to keep it hidden? She paused, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Are you willing to risk it all, Mr. Stratton, for a woman you barely know? Stratton met her challenge, a flicker of determination in his eyes. He pushed all his remaining chips into the center of the table. All in, Ms. Rossi. Her lips curved into a genuine smile, the first he'd seen all evening. A bold move, Mr. Stratton. Very bold indeed. That I think I like you. But unfortunately for you, I always play to win. She revealed her hand. A full house. Stratton showed his. A straight flush. The room went silent. Isabella's smile faltered, just for a moment. Beginner's luck? She said, recovering quickly. Or perhaps, a sign that we should continue this conversation. Elsewhere. Yacht of thieves. The serpent's kiss. They're auctioning it. Isabella swirled the amber liquid in her glass, the ice clinking softly. The penthouse view sprawled below, a glittering tapestry of London lights, but Stratton barely noticed. His focus was laser-locked on Isabella. On the casual way she dropped a bomb into the conversation like a sugar cube in tea. Auction? Where? Isabella finally met his gaze, a flicker of amusement in her dark eyes. Private affair. Yacht. Somewhere off the coast of Monaco. Invitation only, naturally. She took a slow sip, savoring the moment. The serpent, or someone acting on his behalf, is cashing out. Too much heat, perhaps. Stratton felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of hope and trepidation. This was it, the opening he needed. When? 3 days. 3 days to assemble a team, devise a plan, and infiltrate a floating fortress teeming with criminals. Anya's freedom rested on it. You know the yacht's name. The Serafina? Isabella purred, a knowing smile playing on her lips. A fitting name, don't you think? Serafina, beautiful and deadly. He didn't comment, already mentally cataloging the information. He needed help, and fast. The first call went to Spanner. His old comrade picked up on the second ring. Stratton, what unholy mess have you gotten yourself into now? I need you. Monaco. 3 days. He kept it brief, knowing Spanner understood the unspoken language of urgency. Details? Yacht. The Serafina. Retrieval op. A pause. Sounds expensive. I'm in. Next was Gemma. a master of disguise and infiltration. He found her in Prague, apparently knee-deep in a counterfeiting ring. Stratton, darling, missed you. Another impossible mission, I presume. Her voice dripped with sardonic charm. He outlined the situation, omitting Isabella's involvement for now. Gemma's sharp intake of breath was audible even over the phone. A yacht auction? Honey, that's a viper's nest wrapped in silk. Count me in that. I've got a little black number that's just begging for a spin on the Riviera. With the team tentatively assembled, Stratton retreated to his sparsely furnished apartment. He spread out nautical charts of the Monaco coastline, downloaded blueprints of luxury yachts, and began to piece together a plan. The Serafina was a floating palace, bristling with security. Infiltration would be a nightmare. Spanner arrived first, a walking arsenal in a rumpled suit. Gemma followed, a whirlwind of perfume and carefully crafted nonchalance. The tension in the room was palpable, a silent acknowledgement of the danger that lay ahead. Right? Stratton began, his voice low and focused. The Serafina is scheduled to be 15 nautical miles off the coast of Monaco. That puts us in international waters, no official law enforcement. Just us and the sharks. He pointed to the blueprints. Security is tight. Motion sensors, infrared cameras, a small army of armed guards. We need to be ghosts. Gemma tapped a manicured nail on the blueprints. I can get us inside. I have acquaintances who owe me favors in the catering industry. A few strategically placed sleeping pills in the hors d'oeuvres, and we'll have half the guests snoring before the main course. Spanner grinned, a flash of white teeth. I can handle the security systems. Give me an hour, and I'll have those cameras feeding us a loop of sunshine and rainbows. We need a distraction, Stratton said, his gaze drifting towards the charts. Something big. Something that will draw their attention away from the auction itself. An idea sparked in his mind. A small fire. Engine room. Containable but alarming. Enough to send the security scrambling. They spent the next few hours dissecting the blueprints, fine-tuning their plan, assigning roles. Gemma would infiltrate the yacht disguised as a waitress. Spanner would disable the security systems, and Stratton would make his way to the auction, locate the Serpent's Kiss, and extract it. And what about escape? Gemma asked, her eyes narrowed. We can't just waltz out the front door with a multi-million-dollar necklace. Stratton pointed to a small, almost imperceptible detail on the blueprints. There's a maintenance hatch on the lower deck that leads to the water. We use it to get to a fast boat waiting nearby. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal. But it was their only chance. He looked at his team. Their faces grim but determined. He knew they were the best, and Anya was counting on them. The Monaco skyline beckoned, a promise of danger and a glimmer of hope, storming the castle. The black Zodiac inflatable cut through the inky Mediterranean water. A silent predator stalking its prey. Stratton, kneeling at the bow, kept his gaze fixed on the shimmering behemoth that was Isabella Rossi's yacht. Moonlight glinted off the polished hull, a beacon of opulence in the otherwise undisturbed darkness. The yacht, Serafina, looked impregnable, but Stratton knew better. Every fortress had its weakness. 5 minutes. A gruff voice crackled through his comm that it was Davies. Piloting the Zodiac with practiced ease, Stratton adjusted his night vision goggles. The air hung thick with the scent of salt and diesel. The plan was audacious, bordering on insane, but Anya's desperate plea echoed in his mind. Rossi had framed her. He was certain of it, he needed to prove it, and the Serafina held the answers. They approached the yacht's stern, sticking to the blind spots of the security cameras. Davies expertly maneuvered the Zodiac alongside, nudging against the hull with barely a whisper. A grappling hook, launched by Miller, snagged on the railing of the lower deck. Secure? Miller confirmed. Stratton was the first to ascend the rope ladder. The cool metal biting into his gloved hands, he reached the deck, a wide expanse of teakwood that smelled faintly of lemon polish. He signaled the others up. Miller, with his wiry frame and uncanny ability to blend into shadows, took point. Davies, the muscle, brought up the rear. Cameras at 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock, Miller whispered, pointing to the discreetly placed surveillance devices. Miller worked quickly, a small device humming in his hand, and he aimed it at each camera in turn. Circuits fried. They're blind. They moved silently along the deck, hugging the shadows, until they reached a set of double doors leading into the yacht's interior. Davies produced a lock-pick set, the tiny instruments gleaming under the sliver of moon. He worked for what felt like an eternity. The only sound the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. Finally, with a soft click, the lock disengaged. Inside, the yacht was a labyrinth of polished wood, plush carpets, and glittering chandeliers. They moved through the corridors, their footsteps muffled by the thick carpeting. A faint hum of machinery permeated the air, the sound of a floating palace keeping itself alive. Infrared sensors ahead, Miller warned. Hallway to the right. Stratton consulted the schematics they had acquired. The auction room, their target, was on the upper deck, near the bow. But getting there wouldn't be easy. They reached a junction, 2 corridors stretching ahead. Davies moved to the security panel on the wall with practiced ease. He bypassed the keypad and disabled the motion sensors in the adjacent hallway. All clear, he announced. They crept down the hallway, past closed doors that hinted at luxurious cabins. The air grew warmer, the scent of expensive perfume and cigar smoke heavy in the air. They could hear faint music, the murmur of voices. They were close, reaching the stairwell. They ascended quickly, their movements precise and coordinated on the upper deck. A single guard stood watch outside a pair of ornate, gold-leaf doors. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with the confidence of a seasoned professional. "Miller, take him out," Stratton whispered. Miller moved with lightning speed as he appeared from the shadows, his hand flashing out to clamp over the guard's mouth as he drove a needle into the man's neck. The guard slumped to the ground, unconscious before he even knew what had hit him. Stratton examined the doors. They were heavy, reinforced, and undoubtedly locked. But Stratton had anticipated this. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small, circular device. "Breaching charge," he explained. "Stand back." He placed the device on the lock and activated it. A low hum filled the air, followed by a sharp crack. The lock shattered. Stratton kicked the doors open, and they burst into the auction room. The scene that greeted them was a tableau of wealth and power. Around a large, mahogany table sat a dozen figures, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. In the center of the table, resting on a velvet cushion, was the Serpent's Kiss necklace, and presiding over the room, her eyes narrowing as she saw them, was Isabella Rossi. The room fell silent. All eyes were on Stratton and his team. The faint music cut off abruptly. The air crackled with tension. Well, Rossi said, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "What a delightful surprise." The serpent unmasked. The air crackled with anticipation. The yacht, Isabella Rossi's floating palace, throbbed with the pulse of wealth and illicit desire. Diamonds glittered under the Mediterranean moon, reflecting in the avaricious eyes of the assembled guests. Isabella, a vision in emerald silk, raised her glass. "To the serpent," she purred, her voice amplified by the sound system. "May his legend continue to inspire." Stratton, standing near the grand piano, felt the tension thicken. He scanned the room, his gaze lingering on the faces of notorious art thieves, corrupt officials, and shadowy brokers. He needed to time this perfectly. Anya's life depended on it. Isabella gestured towards a velvet-draped pedestal. "And now, the piece de resistance." The eye of R.A. prepared to be mesmerized. The velvet was whisked away, revealing the necklace, a hypnotic swirl of gold and sapphire. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. This was his moment. Stratton strode forward, his footsteps echoing on the polished teak. "A fitting prize for a serpent," he said, his voice cutting through the murmur. All heads turned, focusing on him. Isabella's painted smile faltered. "Stratton, what an unexpected pleasure." "Pleasure's debatable, Isabella. Especially when it involves framing innocent people." He ignored her and addressed the room. "You all admire the serpent, fear him even, but do you really know him?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air. "I do, and he's standing amongst you. He's been orchestrating this charade from the very beginning." A ripple of unease ran through the room. Whispers broke out. Stratton's eyes narrowed, locking onto a figure near the bar, a man impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. Victor Sorrell, international financier, philanthropist. and the master manipulator known as the Serpent. Sorrel's face remained impassive, but a flicker of something dark flashed in his eyes that he raised his glass in a mock toast. Stratton, you wound me. Such baseless accusations. Baseless? I have evidence, Sorrel. Enough to unravel your entire operation. The stolen blueprints, the coded messages, they all lead back to you. Sorrel slammed his glass on the bar. The room went silent. Enough of this theater. He snapped his fingers. Immediately, two hulking men materialized beside him, their eyes cold and predatory. I was hoping for a civilized discussion, Stratton sighed, cracking his knuckles. But I suppose that's too much to ask from a snake. The bodyguards lunged. Stratton sidestepped the first. His fist connecting with the second's jaw with a sickening crunch, he spun. Using the momentum to sweep the legs out from under the first guard, Sorrel, surprisingly agile, produced a silenced pistol from his jacket. A shot rang out. Stratton ducked behind the grand piano. The bullet embedding itself in the wood with a dull thud, he returned fire, using a small, compact pistol he'd concealed under his jacket. The bullet grazed Sorrel's arm, drawing. A hiss of pain. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed and scrambled for cover. The yacht transformed from a haven of luxury into a battlefield. Stratton weaved through the panicking crowd. Using them as cover, he knew he couldn't win a protracted gunfight. He needed to get to Sorrel. Suddenly, a figure moved between them. Isabella. She raised her own pistol, aiming not at Stratton, but at Sorrel. Sorry, Victor, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. But my loyalties lie elsewhere. Sorrel stared at her, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. Isabella? You betrayed me? Undercover Victor. For years. She fired. The bullet struck Sorrel in the shoulder, sending him staggering back. You! Sorrel roared, firing back at Isabella. Stratton used the momentary distraction to close the distance. He tackled Sorrel, sending them both crashing to the deck. The pistol flew from Sorrel's grasp. They grappled, a brutal dance of fists and elbows. Sorrel, despite his age, fought with a desperate ferocity. Stratton felt a sharp pain in his ribs, but he pressed on, fueled by adrenaline and the burning need to clear Anya's name. Isabella, meanwhile, dealt swiftly with Sorrel's remaining guards. She moved with a deadly efficiency that belied her elegant appearance. Finally, Stratton managed to pin Sorrel, his forearm pressing against the man's throat. It's over, Sorrel, Stratton said, his voice hoarse. The serpent is unmasked. Sorrel's eyes bulged, his face turning purple. He clawed at Stratton's arm, but his strength was failing. Suddenly, the yacht lurched violently, throwing them both off balance. A deafening explosion ripped through the air, followed by the screech of tearing metal. The yacht was taking on water and sinking fast. Escape from the deep. Sorrel staggered as the desk lamp, yanked from its mooring by Stratton, crashed onto the Persian rug. A crimson thread traced a path through his meticulously styled silver hair. You wouldn't, he choked, his retreat a desperate scramble. The serpent's kiss, knocked loose during the struggle, glinted invitingly on the gleaming mahogany. The necklace goes back where it belongs, Sorrel? Stratton rumbled, stepping forward. The ache in his ribs, courtesy of Isabella's earlier mishap, a mere distraction. And Anya Petrova walks. With surprising speed for a man his age, Sorrel dove for a concealed button beneath the desk. Stratton anticipated the move, sending the heavy chair spinning into Sorrel's path. The disruption provided the opportunity he needed. He snatched up the necklace, its emeralds flashing with what seemed like predatory awareness, and secured it inside his jacket. A piercing whine sliced through the air. Not the expected fire alarm, but something far more ominous. A timer. His gaze darted frantically around the opulent study. Too late, Stratton, Sorrel croaked, a grotesque smile contorting his features. The yacht is wired stem to stern. You can't prevent it now. Isabella, visibly battered and gasping for air, lurched into the room. Stratton, move. The whole damn thing's rigged to blow. A glacial spike of dread pierced Stratton's focus. He seized Isabella's arm, yanking her toward the doorway. Escape route. Aft, tender, she bellowed, wrenching free and surging ahead. They exploded onto the deck, the insistent ticking now a deafening pulse in their ears. The lavish yacht, once a monument to Sorrel's ego, had become a floating pyre. They clambered down a narrow ladder to a waiting speedboat, its engine already a snarling promise of escape. Isabella gripped the wheel, her face a mask of determination. "Brace yourselves," she yelled, slamming the throttle forward. The speedboat knifed through the aquamarine expanse, leaving a turbulent white scar in its wake. Astern, the yacht loomed, a gilded tomb about to become their watery grave. Then, incandescent fury, the yacht disintegrated in a cataclysmic bloom of fire, showering the surrounding sea with burning wreckage. The shockwave buffeted their small craft, threatening to capsize them. Isabella wrestled with the helm, battling to keep the boat upright. "Damn him to hell," she spat. "He truly intended to drag us down with him." As the smoke began to dissipate, two more speedboats materialized from the yacht's lingering shadow, their occupants armed and plainly intent on fulfilling Sorrel's final wish. The hunt was on. The ensuing moments dissolved into a chaotic ballet of spray, roaring motors, and agonizingly close calls. Isabella steered with an uncanny instinct, threading their vessel through the surging waves and executing hairpin turns that left their pursuers struggling to maintain control. Statham, anchored against the pitching deck, responded with a pistol scavenged from one of Sorrel's thugs. Gunfire ripped through the air, the tang of saltwater mingling with the bitter reek of cordite. Finally, after an eternity compressed into a handful of heartbeats, they shed their pursuers within a labyrinth of islets and secret inlets. They nursed their bullet-riddled speedboat back to shore. Their nerves shredded later, Statham received a cryptic message. Anya Petrova released. All charges dismissed. The Serpent's kiss, officially recovered, had served as the keystone in dismantling Sorrel's network of deceit. He found Isabella awaiting him at the designated rendezvous. A modest cafe overlooking the harbor, she appeared drained but triumphant. "She's free, Statham." "You pulled it off." He nodded, a momentary hint of satisfaction flickering across his features. He reached into his jacket and produced the Serpent's kiss, placing it on the tabletop between them. "Yours now, Isabella. You know its purpose." Isabella fixed her gaze on the necklace, its emerald facets reflecting the fading light of day. "And you, Statham? What becomes of you?" He offered a faint, enigmatic smile. "I believe I'll vanish. There are other shadows that require attention." He rose, his silhouette etched against the darkening horizon. "Thank you, Isabella, for everything." And then he was gone, simply evaporated into the approaching night. Isabella watched him depart, a complex tapestry of admiration and regret woven within her. She picked up the Serpent's kiss, its cool weight grounding her. Anya was safe, Sorrel extinguished, yet Statham remained an elusive phantom, an elemental force, an enigma she knew she would never fully decipher. She grasped the necklace tightly, its emeralds now imbued not with malice, but with a disquieting, profound insight. The immediate conflict was resolved, but for Isabella, a new chapter had begun.